Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
The character is who is in your comfort zone. The character is who's driving the ship sometimes. And the problem is we want to be able to achieve a certain thing, but what happens when we want to make those calls? We don't do it, right? We want to eat good and something comes up, right? We get hungry. We don't, and that's driven by our character. And we talked about one of the biggest ahas for anyone is how do I go move from my character being in control to the mind being in control? And so many people are so used to the character being in control, their entire life is driven by comfort, which is driven by their character. You guys remember this? We talked about this a lot. I drew the hand out that had the strings, the puppet, and you got to figure out who's going to be in control. Is it going to be the character? Is it going to be the mind? And even that video I shared this morning, it gave the same kind of similar concept. It just talks about the difference between emotion and logic. And did you guys watch the video? Nope. The reality is it talks about the more powerful aspect is we know that if I stand at the top of a building, right, and let's say the Empire State Building, whatever it is, I stand to the edge, and I'm 100 plus stories high, I get super scared. But logic's got to know I'm fine because what? Because there's a giant glass wall in front of me, I can't fall down. But people tend to get very scared and back off because the more powerful of the two is emotion. And that's why emotion drives so much of our lives in regards to how we do. And that really equals to the character. You guys with me on this? The reason I want to finish up on this is because we have the next 2 weeks to really plan on this and get really clear on where we're at. And really get clear on what we're going to do next year in regards to the people that we are on that aspect. So anybody remember that part? That part we talked about, right? And Alex and I talked about that too. Here is the main gap with these balls. Who remembers what this is? Right? Your current self and your dream life, right? It's two different differences. You guys remember we draw that out? There's a ball, there's a gap. That's what Alex was talking about. What was that you were saying a minute ago?
So there's your current life, which is completely tied to your current character, and then there's the ideal life you want, and then the future character you can become in order to get that life with, that life. But the issue is the gap in between, and a lot of times people don't know how to bring those steps down forward to cross that gap.
Yes, and the gap is right. It's here. Here's your current self, your current thing. We went through the exercises, right? We went through the exercises of current self. Anybody remember that? There's some ahas in that. I bet most people have not looked at that since. It's important to do that because you got to slowly make this change. It's not going to happen in a day. It happens in weeks and months, over and over and over, of just fighting our character. And that's what we're going to talk about today is how do I fight my character? It has to be consistent because the character's going to win if you let it. You go right back to the same habits, right back to the same ways. You watch you a lot of times, they'll lose a lot of weight. Over a short period of time, then what happens? They gain it right back because their life is driven by the character, not by the mind, right? And so it's important for us to look at that in that aspect, and we break that down. And so what I'm trying to help you all understand is the reason that we're here in our current life, in our dream life, no matter how hard we want to set goals and put those on paper, whatever it is, we're never going to make a difference until we change the character, aka the inside out, right? Our subconscious mind. And the same thing that video talked about today too was this Dr. Maxwell Maltz. It's that book, Psycho-Cybernetics. And we talked about that. I've studied that a lot. Anybody remember what that talks about? There's two cells. Every person has two cells. Every person has the person you see in the mirror when you look in the mirror in the morning, and the second one you have is your self-image. And everything that's driven in your life is driven by your self-image. And that what the doctor talked about, and he was actually a surgeon who did surgery on people, plastic surgery, and he noticed that certain people he would do the surgery on, it would change their life. Other people he would do the plastic surgery on, they look totally different, nothing would happen, they'd still be just as depressed or sad or whatever it may be, and that was because it was driven by what? Their inner self, right? Their self-image, and the self-image has been developed over years and years and years of time. And so what we do here is we try to help build up your self-image, aka your character, to get you more stronger so you can do what you know you need to do, right? What we do from a science here is very simple. We have scripts, we have presentations, right? Everything's very simple for you. X amount of leads, there's a plethora of leads. Why do you see awards? Some people are way higher than everyone else. It comes down to their beliefs and their character on the inside, right? How do they step up to the plate once the opportunity's there? Do they swing and hit the home run, or do they just turn around and go back and sit in the dugout, right? And so that's the way I want you guys to think about this, understand what we talk about, but you have to do two things. Number one, you have to view yourself in the third person. You have to start viewing yourself in the third person. Why is that?
Call out the real.
Yes, I got to be able to call it the real. I got to be able to look outside myself, my judgment. right? I got to look at my judgment, the way I act, the way I do things. There's deep, deep stuff in this. I'm just telling you guys. A lot of times the biggest problem with people is they can't see their own challenges holding them back. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. One of those is judgment, right? Judging the exercise we did, both the current self and the future self. And some people even judge it, didn't do it because they were too busy judging it, which is the one thing that's holding them back. And so you got to realize that I got to be able to look at myself in the third person. And that's the one thing that Ed Milet talked about in that podcast I shared with you guys. He talks about most people think they're better than they are. Think they're better than they are at sales, think they're better than they are in communication and influence, and the best of the best always realize that I'm not as good as I could be right now, and I got to work on getting better. That dude, Ed Milet, worth $400 million, guess what he says? He's not near as good as he should be. And that's the mindset you got to have in sales, which keeps you pushing on. So we talked about this. You have to learn to view yourself in the third person, view as an observer and a master of your character. I got this quote from that guy, Sam Upham's, going to read to you. And it says, "The self is nothing but an illusion built from the mental programming. All of life is simply a magnificent illusion created by your mind. The only true judge of success is when it's put to test in the market. There is not one definitive right or wrong, just what is popular belief. Physical science is an illusion. Quantum science is the mind's material. The victim has a story about why they can't. The winner has no story. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Inside reflects outside. It does not matter what's true. It only what you believe is true, because with what works will become true." Does that make sense to anybody? Kind of deep there. When he talks about, I get to myself in third person, it just gets to, the reality is myself on the board right here has to do with my belief. So where I am right here doesn't have really to do with specific scripts or anything else. It just has to do purely with what my belief is about myself. And obviously my actions, and somebody if you're brand new obviously has to do with the time that you've been here. Does this make sense? And so I want to talk about this thing. An example that we talk about is a problem in society right now that we talk about is the coin flip. Most people view, and here's the problem is, this is a paradigm of society. Everyone is brought this way in thinking that success is just luck, right? That success is a part of just an odds-based thing, and it talks about 9 out of 10 businesses fail, right? Being successful in achieving your dreams is statistically nearly impossible. And really it comes down to people who basically think that people succeed are lucky or is a fluke. And they think that success comes down to this one type of statistical anomaly, right, where it's a 50-50 shot. I just either have it or I don't have it, right? Or so-and-so's got a better skill set than me, or so-and-so's done it a little different. They just get the best leads. They think it comes down to a statistical anomaly when in reality it's not. And that's the one thing I wrote about. In my notes it says, a coin displays 50-50 odds because it's independent from an observer and it can't influence the outcome. Read again. A coin displays 50-50 odds because it is independent from the observer and can't influence its outcome. What do you think that means? It is what it is. There's no outside influence, just obviously flipping the coin, which is a true 50-50 occurrence, right? And so the problem is most people are brought up thinking that, man, this is the same exact way as everyone else. And the one thing I have in my notes here from going through this is the difference is, and you have bet on that, right? A lot of people bet on a coin flip. People have done it before. It's a pretty easy bet to do. I'm not going to bet on that in that regards. $1 on heads, $5 on heads, whatever it is. A lot of people do that. And so the reality is, though, there's a difference here, is what if that same coin, right, and this is obviously some deep shit. It's a lot easier to draw it. The same coin, right, had an arm on it, had a brain, right? And that brain and the arm can influence the outcome. Seems kind of crazy. Wish I had a much better drawing of this. I got one from my notes, but let's say that the coin had a much better outcome, right? The coin has a brain sticking outside of it, also has the ability to think and participate in the experiments to influence its odds. Right? Would you bet on that? Right? If someone pulled out one of those coins and said, hey, look, I want to bet on this with you. This is my coin. It has a brain and an arm outside of it. Would you bet on that? Why? Why not, Scott? 100%, right? A coin to place by itself 50-50 odds because it's independent from that, right? A thinking and interacting coin displays odds that make no sense because it can participate in the experiment and influence its outcome. You guys see where I'm going with this?
Like a weighted dice or electric dice or whatever.
100%, I can control that. And so you see the difference here, and I'll take this and put this in the box of success. It's a lot different, right? Society's current paradigm treats humans as coins bound by fixed odds, unable to determine their outcome in life, right? But the reality is we're not in that aspect. We have the ability to control our outcome based on the way we think, right? AKA mindset. And what do you think the arm represents? Work. right? Do I do the work? Do I constantly show up? Do I make sure I go through this in 2021? Am I the one that's going to influence that coin based on my actions, the way I think? And so the one thing I want to talk about today is just us getting to where we can understand the character and how we separate ourselves from that character. And so that was the one thing I talked about is humans in a game of life where we have the ability to think, interact, and participate in the experiment to determine our own odds. And so if you look at this, all of what 2020 is and all of what 2021 is, it's a really giant experiment of how we show up mentally and how we show up physically in regards to doing the work. Right? Do I show up and work a full day? Do I show up consistently and work a full day? Right? In regards to how that shows up. And that's one thing comes down to our patterns is the reality is that to look at is coming in 2021 is that you can decide which side that you land on. Just makes sense, you guys? And so if I look at where I'm at right now and how I finish up this board, if I've been here a full year, and where I want to be in 2021, I can influence that outcome. But I have to do a lot of work on two things. Number one, myself, and number two, in the game. The hardest one is to do it on myself, which is why people fight it so much. Why? Because they're attached to that character, they're attached to their stories, their beliefs, and everything that's helped them get to that part. And so one thing I really kind of took from my notes and going through and studying a lot of this stuff is that it's the notes I had. It's human beings' biggest flaw is they forget who they are. Human beings' biggest flaw is they forget who they are. And that's what most people forget who we are, is that how we're powerful human beings, right? The power that we have from determination, how we can get up and get things done when our back's against the wall. Most people get right in their comfort zone, right in their character, and they do just enough. And that was back to talking about what human beings' biggest weakness is they forget who they are. They forget, I see somebody here at the top, right? Let's say Barrett and Jeremy, that I'm a human being just like them, that I can do the same exact thing. They forget that we're almost the same in terms of opportunity. It's just the difference of learning the skill set and obviously putting in the work. Is there a timeline of different pipelines? Yes, but that makes a big difference there. And that's the one thing that we have to do. And so that's the key part, right? Most people forget they have the ability to think, interact, and change. The key word I'm looking at here for you guys, the hardest thing for anybody to do is what? Change. That goes to getting up, to following through, to getting up in the morning, to working out, to follow up with leads, whatever it may be. It's because, why is the hardest thing to change? Because everyone is being driven by their character. The character is a voice in the head when you say you want to get up in the morning. It says, well, I can sleep a little bit longer. It comes down to the lies we tell ourselves, well, I sleep a little bit longer, I have more energy, and I'll focus better at work. Right? That's the character driving the boat, and that's what's keeping you from getting to your success that you want. Character, how it operates, is your minimal acceptable standard. We've got to change that, right? And that's one thing. You got to figure out who's in control of yourself. If you guys remember the drawing, the way to look at it is I had this person. I'm a terrible drawer, so we got the thumb. Pretty great hand, right? That's great for me. And then I got the stick person, right, with my arms. And what's happening? All these things are being driven and controlled by what? And so for me to beat this and hack this algorithm, I got to change the other part, and I got to draw by my mind. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, if some of y'all noticed it, right? We have to learn to view ourselves in the third person. We have to learn to get outside ourselves and look at our stories, judgments, and things that control our character. But here's the thing. What if it's so powerful you can't overcome it? This is what I want you to get, and this is my other aha for you guys if you get it.
And you gave up.
Right? What do most people do, though? They want to eat good, and then cake's in front of them, right? And it goes back to the feeling of good, right? Or what really happens, I want to make calls, and I'm scared to make calls, so what do? I create a story. Well, you know what? Maybe it's only 9 a.m. Most people probably aren't even at their office yet. You know, maybe I should just wait and call in the afternoon. Well, you know what? It's the afternoon. They're probably about to go to lunch. They're probably not too busy right now. They're probably not going to really want to take my call. So maybe I should call them this afternoon. And then I'll make my calls in the afternoon, and what happens? Well, they're probably tired. They're probably working right now. They're super busy. So you know what? I'm probably just going to call them tomorrow. And the whole day's gone through, and guess what that is? That's your character being in control. So what do we do when the character does that? Same thing. I mentioned earlier, a character example is I wake up, I'm going to go to the gym. I'll go to the gym at 6 a.m., alarm goes off 6 a.m., and all of a sudden, what do? I've done this a million times before I learned. We tell ourselves lies. We tell ourselves lies to justify. So the character is going to lie to you. And it's really you lying to you. And so the faster I can pull myself in the third person, look at my story, it's like, dude, is this really true right now? Right? Why did I make a commitment yesterday if I'm going to wake up this morning and think that I can get more sleep and be more energetic? Right? I've got to be able to pull myself in third person, but when your character comes out, what do we got to do? We got to fight it. We got to fight back to our character. And so first step's what? Get in the third person, look at myself like a video game. Get outside my body, right? And the first step one, I got to fight it. I got to fight it, and here's the thing. The more you fight, the easier it gets. That's a big aha I got to going through with Sam Ovens in this, is that the more you fight, the easier it gets. And you look at yourself years ago, especially myself, been going to the gym at 6 a.m. for, 5 years. In the beginning, it's a lot different. I had stories, had all these justifications, things why not to do it. And all of a sudden, one day you just wake up and it's easy. You don't have those stories anymore. You just pop your eyes up and get up. There's no snooze. You just hop out every morning at the same time. It's automatic. That's because you fight your character long enough and your mind's in control, and all of a sudden, guess what? That's evolution. Now I'm version 2.0. 2.0 is stronger than 1.0. Now I got to get 3.0. Does that make sense, you guys? And so this happens all day long with, do I stick into the office? Do I stay till I said I would? Do I make my phone calls? Do I follow up? Whatever it is. That's building your capacity, and so that's the key part here. So here's the thing. When your character, right, pulls his fist up and fights back, what do? This is a big aha. When my character fights back and puts his fist up, I'll pull a knife. When it pulls a knife, I pull a gun. What do that means? I got to double down. Right? If I'm having trouble getting up at 5 or 6 o'clock, I'm going to go at 5:30. And I'm going to go to the gym. Whatever it is, I got to make sure I'm fighting against my character to try to get to that next level. So in essence, that's doubling down on how I do it. So that's a quote to take down. When I realize, hey, look, this is my character talking. Right? What if the feeling's too powerful? When my character draws his fist, I pull a knife. When it pulls a knife, I pull a gun. And that's a great way to look at it, right? You must set the desire, the dream, the goals, then dictate them to your character for execution. If the character kicks back, you give it more. So if I'm scared to make 30 calls, what do I need to do? Fuck you, character, I'm making 50 today. I'm going to stick here and do it. I'll do it the next day, and all of a sudden, guess what I do? I push it up higher, and that's how you beat the character down, and I put the mind in control. I have to get to a point where I double down on the character to put my mind in control. And in essence, what I'm doing there is I'm jumping the gap. But if anything you take from today is I got to learn to fight the character. And if you want to translate that, I got to learn to fight the stories. Because the stories are what's holding you back. Right? It could be stories about this, it could be stories about the process, it could be anything. But all along the journey, same thing with me, man, all the time from all the evolution of, like Brandon talked about when I was eating $30 a week at Walmart, right, to growing a business, doing this part, to being in the gym. My character fought and screamed the whole entire way, looking back. But what do? Just double down and do it anyways, right? And so that's one thing that you got to look at in that aspect.